On Cricbuzz In Conversation today, I'm with somebody I've wanted to talk cricket with for a long time. I've had the opportunity a few times and I've always emerged a little more knowledgeable when I speak to Tom Moody, who combines, by the way, the two qualities that not everybody has: height and stature, both. Some have height, but not the stature. Tom Moody has got height and stature both. And yet, here's a trivia thing for you, Tom, 6'6" and not the tallest in your house.
No, well, it's still debatable, Harsha, and it's nice to speak to you as well. My son is, I'm calling it, he's exactly the same height as me, but if you talk to him, he'll probably say he's got a millimetre on me.
So you're 199, so he just tips the scale at 2, you think?
No, I'm actually 2. I'm recorded at, I think on Wikipedia or one of those online sites as 190. I'm exactly 200, and I think he's probably about, or he's claiming he's about 200 and a half.
It doesn't matter. That's stratospheric for people like us, so that doesn't matter. I mean, with all those wisdoms at the back, do you also have room for a hat rack because you've worn so many over the years? Director of cricket, captain, coach, mentor, all these things that you've been over the years?
Yeah. Oh, look, I consider it as a privilege more than anything else, Harsha, that, you know, I've had the opportunity and hope that I continue to have the opportunity to play, you know, many roles and wear many hats, because it's something that runs through my veins. You know, the game runs through my veins, like I know it does with you and many others. And to be able to play different roles within the game, I find fascinating. You're constantly learning. You know, in the commentary box around the people like yourself and whoever it might be that is on the roster that day, I consider it as a great learning opportunity. You know, I don't go in there as the expert. I go in there hoping that I'm going to pick up a bit of gold dust from someone else just in conversation. So being involved from a coaching, administrative and a commentary point of view, I find it a fascinating way to remain current. And also constantly push myself to learn about the game.
And yet, in your role as a coach, you're the one who's imparting wisdom, taking decisions. And we'll tell the story of Tom Moody as coach through a series of pictures. And inevitably, I mean, we're largely in India, Tom. So we'll start with the team that you're most closely identified with, and that, of course, is the SunRisers. You coached them, 7 years? I imagine you, and I don't imagine a baggy green. I don't imagine the yellow and the green and gold. I imagine the orange of the SunRisers. What was it like building that franchise? You're a coach that's coming in, a franchise that in another avatar has won an IPL, but is really in turmoil. How do you start building a franchise?
Yeah, look, it was a fascinating opportunity, which came about really through a phone call from Matai Muralidharan. I was in South Africa at the time. He called me out the blue and said, look, would you be interested in getting back involved in coaching? And, you know, at first I was a little bit hesitant, but then when I thought through it, the adrenaline started to rush and I thought, well, this is where I belong. I'm passionate about coaching. So to pick up the list that Deccan Chargers had left after trading Rohit Sharma to Mumbai Indians, and you know there was all sorts of things happening behind the scenes, as you well know. In a way, was probably not a bad thing in the sense that it enabled me to start from scratch. You know, I didn't have an established side. I didn't have any major superstars, even though we had Shikhar Dhawan, but Shikhar was at that stage just starting to flex his muscles, you know, on the international stage. He certainly wasn't established as he is now. So you start by building, firstly, the personnel around the domestic personnel, and that's the hardest thing. International players, there's many options that you can turn to. But, you know, the key, I believe, one of the keys to a successful IPL franchise is the depth of quality of your domestic players. And that's improved dramatically over the years in India, because I think the IPL has been a wonderful platform for players to develop their game. But that was primarily the target for the first 3 years, is to develop those players, identify those domestic players, and then identify a brand of cricket that we wanted to play that was suited to the home ground in Hyderabad. So what is it we want to, how do we believe that we can win more than lose at home, and also be robust enough on the road to be able to have the options to be effective away from home in different conditions.
What do mentors do? You had a Murali, you had Lakshman, both at heart decent human beings, soft-spoken, modest, but how much, what is their role? There's this strange new creature in the world of cricket called a mentor. So how did the three of you work together?
Very well, because we were very good friends, firstly. We had huge respect for each other, and we all brought different things. You know, from a coaching perspective, I'm forever grateful to both of those guys because they trusted me as coach. They trusted my judgment. They would give me information through their incredible experience, and whether I took that information or advice and followed through with it or not, there was never a second question of it. So we were very close with regards to how we understood each other, and very different. You know, like Laxman, for instance, as we know, he's such a gentleman. You know, such a beautiful man, but he's so highly regarded, and quite rightly so. So his impact on the Indian players was profound. You know, they would listen to every single word that Laxman would mutter. And he also found himself playing an important role, whether he asked for it or not, with the overseas players, because they saw him as a real source of information. They clearly admired him as one of India's greats, and they wanted to learn from him. So he became a very important person with regards to that. Murali, he's like the fire starter. You know, he is full of energy, as you know. He's got incredible insight of the game, incredible passion for the game, and you know, he just adds so much energy and creates that positive environment, and he's quite happy to be the center of the laugh, which fascinated a lot of the young players. They thought, my God, you know, how can, this is Matai Muralidharan, but he's happy to be the one that's wearing the chocolate cake on the face, or whatever the case might be.
Then you've got your lead batsman at the time, who blows hot, blows cold. At that time, he was revered sometimes, he was hated sometimes. David Warner was this very polarizing figure. And yet, the Warner of Australia and the Warner of SunRisers could have been twins growing up in different continents. How do you manage somebody like that? And you actually made him captain.
Yeah, which surprised a lot of people at the time. But I suppose when we secured Davey in the auction, and it was, to be truthful, it was by chance that we got him, because we were expecting Delhi to use the right to match card, which they failed to do. So obviously they ran out of patience with regards to his maturity as a player and as a person, where I assured our owners and our management that, you know, trust me, I feel that I can work and get the very best out of Davey, because he's a superstar. And as soon as he put orange on, he didn't really look back. When it comes to the leadership, I think a lot of people don't understand with David Warner is that he's a very astute thinker of the game. They just sort of see him as this person that just bangs the ball out of the ground and intimidates the opposition, and you know, it can be a little bit chirpy. Certainly the old David Warner can be a bit chirpy, but the bottom line is that there was this real drive inside him, which I knew that he wanted to take on leadership, and he had the tools, as in he had the skill. And from a coaching point of view, your role, in my view, is that you just fill the spaces that whoever the leader may be, that he may be falling short in. So I knew that I could cover the areas that maybe he might be slightly weak or developing in, and there's certain things that he could do out in the middle that very few could do. So, you know, I sort of backed it, and thankfully had the backing of, Murali and Laxman, the two mentors, and obviously the management at the time.
We actually did a similar program with David Warner, and we asked him about being reverend, and he spoke with great warmth about growing as a person. I mean, he's seen more about life than so many have. So it's interesting that he talked about that and what captaincy meant to him. And yet here you are, he's led you to a title in 2016. He's giving you 500-600 runs every season. One season he gives you 800 runs. That's a ridiculous number of runs for an IPL tournament. Suddenly he's not available. And you go from David Warner to Kane Williamson. So you say, here's all the qualities Warner has, here's all the qualities Williamson has, and never the twain shall meet. Yeah, and you went with Williamson as captain.
Yeah, very interesting, because they're polar opposites, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I suppose the planning that was put in place a few years earlier had come to the fore with Williamson, because we recognised Williamson was not only a wonderful, exciting player when we first secured him in the auction, but we knew that he was a high-quality individual, and we also knew that he was a well-equipped leader. Even though reasonably early on in his leadership, we knew that we had secured in the auction a very, very good leader. So, not that we're expecting the captain to fall over or to appoint Kane Williamson 3 years down the track as a captain, but what we did do is we had planned to make sure that we had good leadership quality within our squad. So when that transition happened, it was an easier transition than trying to secure a captain that had very little experience or had very little respect of the dressing room. Kane Williamson took the cap as captain, and the respect in the dressing room didn't waver. If anything, it rose, because he's such a popular individual.
And of course, he gave you 700 runs and showed that he can be a T20 player as well. That 2016 campaign, where does it sit for you in your life? There's 2 World Cups, there's 2 Test hundreds, but winning an IPL, there's 2007 World Cup final with Sri Lanka, but IPL 2016?
Very precious indeed. It's a humbling experience to be involved in a campaign like that, because we all know how hard it is to win major tournaments, and to be part of that journey and play a small role in helping that sort of realise is something I treasure very highly. I think World Cups obviously are untouchable. Personal milestones, I struggle to remember them. It's really the team things that I hold close to my heart. So those sort of team efforts, both with the off-field team, support team, and the players, are very, very special.
I'm going to come to Ben Cutting in a moment, because even today, if you go to RCB and say, who's your most hated player number 1 of all the people, they're going to say Ben Cutting. Tell us about that final. Yuvraj Singh has played a crucial role. He's got a crucial 30. But that innings by Ben Cutting, is there a role in T20 for a 20-ball batsman? Really, that's how you were using Ben Cutting, isn't it? Go out, 15 balls, 20 balls, and take the game away.
Yeah, I'd even take that down to 10 balls. I think there is absolutely a role. Well, on average, your number 7 in T20 cricket, on average, they would face about 9 balls on average over a tournament. So if you can perfect your skill from anything between that range of 10 to 20 and double the score, as in if you're facing 10 balls, you get 20 runs plus, you become a brilliant finisher. You become someone that puts that cherry on the cake when it comes to that first innings total. Oh, I thought we're only going to get 160, but we got 170. And the difference psychologically with that 10 runs, but also the difference in how the game is played, because you've got that extra 10 runs, it's like an additional over.
Interestingly, in a very batting-driven format, the SunRisers were probably the first franchise in the IPL to say that we can make bowling our primary strength. It's not that the batting was weak, but the bowling was in many ways a primary strength, led by Bhuvneshwar had a couple of outstanding years. Interestingly, you backed your side with Indian bowlers. And that traditionally is something that Indian franchises look overseas for. So talk us through that Bhuvneshwar leading a largely Indian bowling lineup.
Yeah, and he did it so beautifully well, and I'm sure will continue to do it well. Look, we just felt that the bench strength was important with regards to bowling. Bowling is not the easiest art to be consistent with, both physically and skill-wise, and particularly in the pressure cooker of T20 cricket. So we wanted to have a number of options at hand that we can work with. The obvious targets, the high-profile Indian bowlers were more, often taken and locked down in various franchises. So we felt that if we had a number of next rung bowlers that were on the verge of just sort of, announcing themselves as possible international targets, we felt that we could help develop those bowlers, and during that process, we would benefit as a franchise by them delivering and being, consistent for us. So the other aspect to your question about, being bowling strong, I've always had a philosophy around that if you can own your 120 balls in the field, and that is have a good fielding unit, plus have those 120 balls well managed with a very diverse attack and the flexibility with that attack, both on the field or options going into games, I always feel that you create enormous amount of pressure on your opponent. And I think the difference between a quality death bowler against a quality finisher, I think there's more finishers out there than there are quality finishers with the ball. So it's a bit of a supply and demand situation.
Now, an Australian accent, a slightly distant figure. You've got Siddharth Kaul, you've got Sandeep Sharma, you've got Basil Thampi, you've got Khalil Ahmed. Is communication an issue? I mean, Bhuvi had played international cricket, is fine with his communication, with leader of the attack. So how much of the leader of the attack was Bhuvneshwar, and how much of it was you seeking to communicate to people who may not always pick your accent or your vocabulary?
Yeah. Look, having had the experience with Sri Lanka in the early parts of my coaching career, I learned very quickly that communication was, so important with regards to the message you deliver and whether it's understood. I'll give you a brief story on that Sri Lankan experience. And this is a very young Lasith Malinga we're talking about, back in 2005. I remember having all these one-on-one discussions with all the players around their roles and how we're looking to develop them, and thinking that I'm doing all the right things. And I remember it would have been about 4 months into these robust discussions, week in, week out, Mahela Jayawardene came up and said to me, "Hey, listen, coach, what you're doing is brilliant with these one-on-one stuffs, but just with Malinga, he hasn't understood one word that you've said." But you know what it's like, that the Sri Lankans and the Indians, for that matter, are so polite, and you just get this sort of, and I'm thinking, the message is getting through. But, it was an important lesson for me very early on. So when it comes to coaching in that situation, I've quite often used someone when I've known there is a player that hasn't got the confidence with English. I've used a local player to help support me with the messaging, because, the last thing you want to do is alienate that player and make them feel that they don't belong, because they more than belong. They are absolutely critical to the fabric of the side.
Is that how you handle the Fizz? Is that how you handle Mustafizur?
Yeah.
Because the story is that you actually had someone who spoke Bengali with him all the time.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, Ricky Boye was with us during that period of time, and he could communicate with Fizz. And he was very important to us with regards to getting those messages across. And the thing is, with someone like Fizz, you may have a conversation with a player that speaks fluent English that will go for 3 minutes, but with someone like Fizz, your messaging is 10 seconds long. So you keep it very simple, very precise, make sure there's no complications, and he understands it. And Ricky was important in that. Otherwise, it was an impossible situation for the player and an impossible situation for the team.
A couple of things about that stint with some of the decision making at the SunRisers. So obviously getting Fizz was a big thing. Then going out on a limb and getting Rashid and Nabi from Afghanistan. I mean, Rashid, when you got him, wasn't the Rashid Khan that we know him now. So what is the thinking behind going out and getting a Rashid and a Nabi?
Well, I was very keen to get a wrist spinner. I knew that, that wrist spinners were clearly having an impact in the game. Bowlers that could spin the ball both ways, whether it be wrist spinners or whether it be finger spinners that have got the doosra. So I spoke to our analyst, Srini, who was very close with me during my stint, and said to him, look domestically and look internationally and just try to find a number of spinners that can give us this option for us to explore. So over a period of time, we both sort of looked and went through video after video of various options. And then I saw this Rashid Khan bowl. And I then said to Srini, keep sending videos. I need to, have an understanding of what this guy's doing, because clearly no one else does, particularly the ones that have got the bat in their hand. And I sort of made the recommendation on the basis that, one, the pace he bowled, two, the consistency he landed the ball.
Yes.
Okay, the opposition at the time he was bowling to, you could argue was not IPL standard or top level international standard, but what he was doing incredibly consistently. So I felt that it was a gamble worth taking, purely on the basis that the only obstacle we had to face was whether he was going to be overawed by an IPL occasion and the big stage. But Rashid Khan turned out to be someone that would welcome, that atmosphere and that pressure, and the rest is history.
Tell us, is there a story that, or an anecdote, or an occasion that told you this kid belongs here? Was there a challenge you threw at him? Just say, you know what, I think he belongs.
Yeah, I can probably put that down to the very first net session we had in our camp before the first season that he played. There was a few question marks around whether he can bowl, or whether a kid from nowhere can suddenly step up and, one, command the attention he did in the auction, but two, deliver on the big stage. So I got a couple of our senior players, including David Warner, to face him. And within 20 minutes, I realised we'd picked a gem, because his level of competitiveness in that net scenario was, to me, right, this kid's ready to go. He's not worried who he's bowling to. He's delivering it so consistently. No one understood what he was doing. They couldn't work out which way he was turning it. So he just ticked every box in that first training session, and he just went from strength to strength, because once you get the trust and the positive vibe back from your own environment, any player that is, it's a very powerful thing, Harsha, and he had that in 20 minutes.
You let go KL Rahul. Do you sometimes think, oops, what happened there?
Yeah, look, absolutely. What a wonderful player. And we knew he was a good player, because when we first got him from RCB as a young kid, Murali's the one that recommended him, and then we did our homework, and it was clearly, he was an exciting young talent. He was with us for a couple of years, had numerous opportunities, but really didn't nail it down. And certainly looking back, oh gosh, SunRisers with KL in the side would be magnificent. But the realistic situation was that our requirements domestically at that time was for a middle order player that could finish games and had sort of a bit of X factor. So when we released KL, from memory, I think we bought Yuvraj. And Yuvraj played an important role for us in the middle order that season. And we also got Ben Cutting as an overseas middle order finisher. So look, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but at the time, I think it was the right decision. But KL also really hit his straps in IPL cricket when he went to Kings 11.
Yes.
Which I think was probably, 3 years after we released him. Because he had that 1 year where he was injured.
You've been in Pakistan with the Pakistan team. You've been with the West Indies team, with the Sri Lanka, of course, a Bangladesh team, in England, in Australia. What is your ideal World T20 side? I mean, do you look at it and say, you look wistfully into the distance with all the space that you have in Perth and Western Australia, and say, right, this is the kind of team. Wow, I'd go wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking a team that's playing now.
Okay.
So not one that's, that we've seen over the last 10 years. So if I'm picking a team to play in a tournament in the next 3 weeks, I'd go with Warner at the top, with Rohit Sharma. So I've got a left-right hand combination. Kohli 3, AB de Villiers 4, 5. This is a difficult one.
Yes.
I'm keen to go with Joss Buttler, but I recognise, and I'm putting the coach's hat on here, I need a left-hander. So I'm going to go with Nicholas Pooran.
Okay.
I need a left-hander in that middle order, just to give me the balance between left and right, so I don't get sabotaged with matchups and what have you. I then got Andre Russell at 6, 7 Narain, Stark, Rashid Khan, Bumrah, Archer, and my 12th man, without a doubt, because of his fielding brilliance, Jadeja.
That's quite a side. I know Pooran's being talked about very highly as bubbling underneath, but that's a big call on a young player. Is he that good?
And particularly over Dhoni. But that's why I wanted to clarify.
Today, you're picking today.
Is it today? That Dhoni's a no-brainer otherwise. My gosh, I'm his number one fan. I just think, what he's done from a captaincy point of view and from a playing perspective has been, unbelievable. But I have seen a lot of Pooran through my role as Director of Cricket of the CPL. And obviously I've seen him in other franchise cricket outside of IPL. I want to also, clarify that I need the left-hander.
Yes. No, that's fair enough. You said that. Who's captain of that side?
Captain, Rohit Sharma, because he's won more IPL trophies.
I just wanted to let that give a little breathing space around that.